Very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Methot, you served on the board of SDTC from 2016 to 2021, correct?
21 juin 2016 au 14.
21st of June 2016 to the 14th of September 2021.
Released a report that covered much of the time that you sat on the board. You said that there was nothing contained in the Auditor General's report that implicated you in any way. But you have to know, as a member of the board, that that isn't true. The report of the Auditor General was a damning indictment of conflict, corruption, and mismanagement of SDTC while you sat on the board. Isn't that the case?
Il n'y a aucun blâme.
Well, there was no blame laid.
It's a damning indictment, including $59 million of taxpayer money that improperly went out the door, putting aside issues of conflicts of interest. Gross mismanagement while you sat on the board. Do you take responsibility for that?
Je n'ai pas à prendre toute la...
No, I'm not going to take all responsibility for that.
For the fact that you sat on the board as $59 million taxpayer dollars improperly went out the door in non-compliance with the very agreement SDTC had with Industry Canada. You take no responsibility. Is that what you're saying?
Juste avec la liste sur le COVID.
Well, just on this list, this COVID list, and the 21 companies that were listed, I think that...
With greatest respect, I'm not talking about the COVID relief payments only. I'm talking about $59 million. That's beyond just the COVID payments, tens of millions more that improperly went out the door. And I'm just asking you, do you take responsibility for that as a member of the board?
J'ai contribué au meilleur de...
I contributed to the best of my abilities as a member of the board, as all members of the board did.
Take no responsibility for the mismanagement. It's telling.
Mr. Perkins again for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So based on your testimony here today, you have companies that Cycle Capital invested in, which you're partial, if not full owner of Cycle Capital, have received over $30 million of investments from SDTC while you were on the board. You are the biggest single beneficiary of the SDTC money while sitting on the board. Now, you're aware that the SDTC Act, which applied to you, says that board members cannot themselves benefit, nor can their family members benefit. So your companies received more than $30 million while you were on the board. Isn't that a benefit contrary to the SDTC Act?
Ce que vous dites est faux.
Well, what you're saying is false. Out of 250 files that were analyzed when I was a member of the board over those 5 years, 4 companies from Cycle Capital received $10.4 million. 4 companies for which I declared my stake. I followed this governance protocol. I recused myself from the discussions, and I had
received $10 million alone from SDTC while you were on the board. $10 million just in one company. Now, I will ask again. No, you don't get to interrupt me. Sorry, you don't get to interrupt me.
Order,
you don't get to interrupt me.
Order. We really cannot have people speaking over.
You don't get to interrupt me.
Order. Mr. Perkins, Madame Methot, s'il vous plaît. Vous aurez l'opportunité de répondre.
You will have an opportunity to answer once he has asked his question, and I am certain that if you don't get an opportunity, another member will allow you to respond. I'm sorry, but that's how things work here. It's Mr. Perkins' time, and he's the one who will ask his question. So you are here to respond to the questions that are put from the members. And to date, things have been going well. There have been a couple of times when you were not able to respond, and another member provided you with that time to respond. So I'm sure that will happen again. Mr. Perkins. May I ask a question? To me, you may. Chair, when there are statements that are incorrect, that are false, that are part of the question, well, you will have an opportunity to respond. I'm trying to do my best. So, Mr. Drouin, go ahead. I have the utmost respect for my colleagues and for the chair, but you, as the chair, need to make sure that there is a good flow of back and forth. But if there are statements that are false, then the witness has to be allowed an opportunity to respond to that. Well, as I stated, this is Mr. Perkins' time. There's a conversation happening. It is going well. At times, people are cut off, yes. But you will have an opportunity to respond.
Whether it's 10 million or whether it's 30 million or whether it's 50 million, it's contrary to the act. You broke the act that you served on. The SDTC Act says you cannot personally benefit. When SDTC made investments in your companies, while you were on the board, you broke the act. Did you not? It doesn't say in the act recuse.
No, but the principles of governance and ethics that we are taught when we sit on the board is to declare our stakes, our interests, and to recuse ourselves. And it's the same in all those other companies that have connections with the Canadian government or any other government in Canada. That is the practice.
Public board and spending taxpayer money is to not vote and have a board you're sitting on give money to companies that you own interests in. Now, I will ask you again, when you joined the board in 2016, the value of Cycle Capital and its assets under management was a little over 140 million, and when you left, it was 600 million. Seems like it was pretty good business for Cycle Capital to get money from SDTC where you're on the board, and that you also utilized it to screen companies.
C'est quoi, premièrement, l'affirmation.
First, your statement is confusing. Asset under management. Are you talking about asset under management? Yes, in 5 years, there was probably very good performance. However, we are a private fund, not a public fund, and you are confusing two different things, and I'm very surprised, Mr. Perkins. You know, these are the kinds of things that you should understand.
So when the culture of corruption on the board by Annette Verschuren came on and changed, there were 9 directors, including your colleague Guilbeault, who voted for money for himself. You had money given to your companies. Stephen Guilbeault had money given to his companies. There is a culture of corruption that you were participating in approving not only your money, but the money to other board members. Isn't that correct?
C'est complètement faux.
That is absolutely false. And when Jim Balzilli...
You didn't vote for Mr. Imet's companies. You didn't vote for your own because you left the room.
Le lien que vous faites avec la corruption.
The connection you are making with corruption is absolutely unacceptable, Mr. Perkins. It's false.
Members that were appointed, whether they were liberals or separatists, were using this fund in a little cozy group to support each other's companies. That's exactly what happened. That's what the Auditor General found. If you had been a governor and council appointment, do you believe the ethics commissioner would have found you not guilty?
No, I don't think so, no.
Not guilty or guilty of breaking the ethics laws of Canada?
Je crois que...
I believe that the ethics commissioner can reach the conclusions they want to reach. I'm not the commissioner. All I can say is that when I arrived at the board, I was told what was expected of me, how to comport myself. I have always followed those recommendations, and I went even further because I was declaring even potential conflicts, not actual conflicts. Out of 32 times, 28 were a potential. They weren't real conflicts of interest.
Minutes, please. Please, Mr. Cooper, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Methot, you have tabled with this committee a number of documents that we haven't had the opportunity to review that appear to contradict aspects of the findings of the Auditor General's report. Will you agree to, in addition to tabling those documents with this committee, to also turn those documents over to the RCMP?
Mr.
Chair, point of order.
I have nothing to hide, but I don't.
Consequently, j'ai un point d'ordre. Oui, Monsieur Drouin.
Again, Mr. Two powers that are very well known in the Constitution. We're mixing judicial. If the RCMP wants documents from Andree Lise Methot, I know they can just get a search warrant very quickly if they feel to do so. But this tactic, c'est du salissage. Encore une fois, c'est du salissage.
It's just, dirty politics.
Back to you. You got 4.5 minutes. The documents will be publicly available. So whether the witness wants to turn them over or not, the RCMP is going to be able to review them through our committee. They are being tabled. That we distributed to you all. They're publicly available, I hope, this afternoon. You have the floor, Mr. Cooper, 4.5 minutes.
Well, I'd invite the witness to answer my question.
Moi, je pense que...
I think I have put everything on the table here. I have nothing to do with this. I do not understand your question.
I said, would you manage to table a bunch of documents with this committee? Will you also just hand them over to the RCMP, yes or no?
Moi, s'ils ont des questions, ça va me faire plaisir.
If there are questions, I'm happy to answer them. I have nothing to hide. Neither from you.
Oui ou non? S'ils ont des questions, ça va me faire...
If they have questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them.
So I take it the answer is no.
Point of order,
so,
Mr. Chair.
Well, I asked whether...
Point of order,
Ms.
Mr.
Just,
Methot-
j'ai encore un point d'ordre. Yes.
Point of order. Go ahead, please.
I have sat here and I have watched the Conservatives go after our very esteemed witness here
Witness,
today. Please do not interrupt me,
Mr. Cooper, I'm going to hear Ms. Khalid's point of order. Yes, Ms.
And
Khalid.
further to my colleague, Mr. Drouin's point, it is very unfortunate that we're trying to interfere in the RCMP's investigation. If there is one, if the RCMP wants documents, I'm sure that they have many ways to reach out to the witness directly to get those documents. I would really appreciate if Mr. Cooper can stick to what is the mandate of our
thank you.
committee and not
right.
be irrelevant and not be
Thank you.
and
All right,
not
all right,
be
all right.
irrelevant.
Ladies,
please do not
ladies,
talk over me, Mr. Cooper.
ladies and gentlemen, Ms.
Yes,
Khalid,
you have
okay,
done
Ms.
it quite deliberately, Mr.
Ms.
Cooper.
Khalid, I'm going to turn things back over to Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, why don't you move on to your question? You have just over 3 minutes left.
Question. I didn't hear a yes from Ms. Methot. So moving on, is it correct that your Cycle Capital companies, 4 of them, received $10.4 million from SDTC? Did I understand your testimony correctly?
Je vous ai...
I told you that I recused myself. 4 companies I was the one to say.
Questions, you do your best to provide an answer, and I'm simply seeking clarification that there were 4 Cycle Capital companies that received
Mr. Cooper, hold on a second. I'll give you the floor. No. As counsel, you're here to work. Est-ce que ça marche, oui? Oh, no, okay, yes, you're here to, that's fine, okay, as long as, pardon me? No, I know she wasn't speaking, no, I agree, and you're, whoa. Whoa, okay, everyone calm down. Everyone calm down. Everyone calm down. You're
here.
You want to
leave?
Okay, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Drouin as well.
I would say it outside because I simply...
I'm going to suspend this meeting for 4 minutes. Mr. Cooper, Back to you for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the time that we've had, I have confirmed that you did testify that $10.7 million, not $10.4 million, went to 4 cycle capital companies while you served on the board. I would draw your attention to Section 12 of the Canada Foundation for Sustainable Development Technology Act that states that no director shall profit or gain any income or acquire any property from the foundation or its activities. Isn't that precisely what happened when your cycle capital companies received $10.4 million from SDTC?
Écoutez,
Listen, I recused myself from those conversations. It's not 10.7, it's 10.4 million from 4 companies over 5 years. And I recused myself from those conversations to not be in the room.
With the greatest respect, I didn't accuse you of not recusing yourself. I simply cited a section of the SDTC Act that is very clear that no director shall profit or gain any income or acquire any property from the foundation or its activities, and yet 4 cycle capital companies received $10.4 million. I would submit that that is in violation of the Act. And don't take my word for it. I would cite paragraph 6.47 of the Auditor General's report that states, for the duration of a director's term, a director buying or selling securities of an ultimate recipient or being compensated by or holding an investment in an ultimate recipient receiving funding risks not following Section 12.2 of the Act. Those are the findings of the Auditor General. So are you disputing the findings of the Auditor General?
en fait, moi, j'ai
I followed the rules that I was given as a board member. I followed the rules to the letter. I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, and I did what I was told to do. If I was not appointed to the board, Jim Buzzley would have had to refuse the appointment.
Methot, did you read the Act in the 6 years that you sat on the board? Did you bother to read the Act?
j'ai été 5 ans.
I was 5 years and a quarter on the board, and when I began, I read all the documentation, and the way things were managed is I was asked to declare any conflict and recuse myself, just like any company with ties to the government, and I followed the rules.
Ms. Chip, you have the floor for 5 minutes as well.
I am disappointed and disgusted by the Conservatives' behavior and would ask that Mr. Cooper apologize. As such, I'd like to move the following motion, that the committee call for the member for St. Albert, Edmonton to apologize personally for his blatant defamatory accusation against Ms. Methot. I am sorry that you have already stated several times that you feel that your reputation has been tarnished, and previously you had started to say something about yourself being a woman, and then you were cut off. Did you?
Oui. Alors souvent, j'ai eu l'impression que j'étais attaquée.
Yes, I've often been under the impression that I was being attacked because I was a woman, a Quebecer, an environmentalist, because I was known. I don't know. But if ever one day Mr. Perkins wants to go out for coffee, it will be my pleasure to talk with him and to understand what his profound reasons are for attacking a Canadian woman devoted to building businesses.
Mr. Perkins, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
The Auditor General raised almost $400 million of funds that were either conflicted or spent outside the terms of the agreement. That's my concern, on behalf of taxpayers. My concern, I'm sorry if it offends you, that by your own admission, your companies received $10.4 million while you're on the board. But that's not my concern that you feel offended by it. My concern is that you clearly were in a conflict of interest. Now, I want to go in a different vein. On your time on the board, you, according to the lobbyist register, you lobbied government 51 times. Now, I don't know if you were in the meetings, it's under your name, between 2016 and 2021 for various aspects of SDTC's needs. 47 times on those registrations prior to his election, Stephen Guilbeault is listed. Were you both doing the lobbying together, or was Mr. Guilbeault doing it on his own?
Premièrement,
First, those meetings followed all of the lobbying rules. And if you've read about them, it's because they were declared. And Stephen Guilbeault and I traveled across the country subsequent to a study done showing underfunding. Believe it or not, we met with politicians in Alberta. This was before Stephen Guilbeault was in politics. We traveled to Halifax, Ontario, Quebec, federal. Could you please leave?
I was very
votre plan de voyage.
well, so it's true. He was in lobbying 47 times. 11 were with the Prime Minister's office, including Mr. Butts, 2 with Minister Baines, actually 6 times with future Minister Champagne. So it appears that you had a lot of high-level access in Ottawa to those folks. You mentioned Mr. Guilbeault's interest as some sort of compensation. He lists it still, that he has it on his public disclosure of conflict of interest. So since the time that you were on the board until recently, the value of your company has gone up 6 times. So is it fair to say that Mr. Guilbeault's investments, whatever those are, has gone up 6 times?
OK.
Let's settle this very simply. Mr. Guilbeault has passive interest, and when he left, his interest ended and the value is not increased. You are confusing asset management and values. Second point, Mr. Perkins, you were at the CIB when you granted employees at CIB, when they managed funds, the right to passive interests. And Mr. Guilbeault got the exact same treatment as any advisor for any capital risk fund.
Of interest in 2023, which list an interest in Cycle Capital, is incorrect, that he made a false disclosure of conflict of interest?
Monsieur Guilbeault.
Mr. Guilbeault has to make those declarations, given that he had those interests as a kind of a performance bonus. So he has to declare that. It's his responsibility.
He owns, not what he used to own in some time before he was elected. It's what he currently owns, and he's still listed.
Il a toujours,
So I'll move on.
pour répondre à votre question, monsieur.
To answer your question, Mr. Perkins, he's always, had what he says, because we are the ones to provide him with the information each year, and it's reviewed by our...
Declare it. I'll move on. How many investments and what's the value that Brookfield has made in your funds?
Où?
Brookfield Management.
Ils étaient des investisseurs de notre...
They were investors in our first fund, which underperformed compared to the current.
On all your press releases as an industrial partner. What's an industrial partner?
Les partenaires industriels.
Industrial partners, of which we have several, L'Oréal, Hydro-Quebec, Alouette, Alcan, Brookfield, are private corporate businesses or public on the markets that decide to invest in investment funds. And they are
A financing partner on your funds. In 2017...
A very quick question.
Non, attendez, attendez.
Can I? May I?
As time
Monsieur Perkins a le temps pour une dernière question.
from you, then I'm going to go to Ms. Bradford. Mr. Perkins, a short question, no preamble, please.
In 2017, you made an investment with a Chinese state-owned enterprise. They're an investor with you, and you have an office in China. Are you following the Chinese National Security Act that requires those who operate in China to spy and steal technology?
Point of order, Mr. Chair. As much as I have no idea what the heck that has to do with SDTC. If the member wants to put a motion forward to go after those, I'm sure we could, but I don't see how this relates to our study.
Madame Methot, réponse ou...
I'm not a Chinese spy.
Mr. Cawley, you have the floor for 5 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. I want to follow up on a question from Mr. Cooper that I don't think we got answered, was if you had read the SDTC Act that lays out rules and guidance regarding conflict.
Je comprends pas la question.
I do not understand the question, Mr. Chairman.
I've paused the clock for you to ask your question.
Je m'excuse, monsieur. Sincèrement, je comprends pas.
Quite sincerely, I do not understand the question.
I asked you very specifically if you had read the SDTC Foundation Act that stated very clearly about prohibiting board members from receiving any financial gain or other gains.
Moi, ce qu'on m'a expliqué,
What was explained to me was that I had to recuse myself and declare my conflicts.
Asking, did you read that?
écoute, ça fait très longtemps.
It's been a long time, and generally I do read those things. And I have enough experience to read the documents that I need to read as a board member. And if I had not been, acceptable as a member of the board, I would expect that ultimately the minister would have said that.
General?
Avez-vous lu le rapport de la vérificatrice générale?
And you agree with it?
Il y a des points qui sont valides.
There are points that are valid. There are points that merit examination. And as to the list of conflict of interest,
If you say there are points that are valid, do you believe there's invalid points?
Non, ce que j'ai dit, c'est qu'il y a des...
no, I said there are points that are valid. And what I said is when I look at the list of conflicts of interest attributed to me, at the time of the votes, that analysis was not done. And that is why I prepared a table which you will see later, which settles that issue. I think the Auditor General...
Co-founder of Ecofiscal, I think?
Ecofuel.
Ecofuel, Quebec. And another organization that I see received once, and you were co-founder with Minister Guilbeault, I
Non,
understand.
c'est faux.
No, that's wrong. I'm co-founder, but not with Mr. Guilbeault.
OK, laissez-moi vous aider.
Let me help you here. There's Ecotech Quebec, which is a not-for-profit in Quebec, and I'm co-founder with two entrepreneurs. Mr. Guilbeault is not there.
Once the Liberals came to power, the amount of money you received to that program multiplied by 350% or increased by 350%. One of the notes I'm reading from the grants and contributions is the duty of the recipient to relocate or reallocate or redistribute the grant or contributions to third parties. Could you provide for this committee who you redistributed or reallocated the $3 million? I don't need it right now, but could you provide in writing that?
Je ne comprends pas le 3 millions.
I don't understand the $3 million. Who was the $3 million given to?
But straight from the Treasury Board.
OK. Alors, Ecotech...
3.146, actually.
Ecotech...
So Ecotech is a not-for-profit that I co-funded with other entrepreneurs. Ecotech has a board of members.
Or reallocate the monies that you received to third parties.
Monsieur, Ecotech ne distribue...
Ecotech does not distribute money. And it has nothing to do with SDTC.
Directly from the Grants and Contribution website, published by Treasury Board, is a duty of the recipient, yourself, to reallocate or redistribute the grant or contribution to third
No.
parties.
No.
So would you provide?
No.
So you're saying
No.
that this is right from their website.
Écoutez,
I was a founding member, volunteer, founding member of Ecotech Quebec. It's volunteer work.
Understand some of our concern. We have the Auditor General pointing out lots of conflict. You have Treasury Board stating money that went to your foundation, which is supposed to be passed on to other groups that you're now saying. But no,
Ce
let
n'est
me
pas ma
finish, ma'am.
fondation.
Please,
C'est la
let me
fondation.
finish.
It's not my foundation.
When we are Canadians are lining up at food banks at record amounts, difficulty getting
J'ai
by
énormément de
day to
respect
day.
pour tous les
We have
Canadiens et
the
tous les
Auditor
Canadiennes.
General reporting
Écoutez, je
$400
pense qu'on va
million.
devoir quitter, Monsieur le Président.
I think we're going to have to leave.
They're at the table, but you're not allowed, as part of your agreement, to be here to be waiving the offer of questions. Thank you very much. Ma'am, do you understand the concerns expressed by taxpayers and myself?
Avec ça, Monsieur, je suis la...
I'm the co-founder of a not-for-profit that belongs to its members.
About this whole
Ah,
scandal?
non, je peux dire que j'ai énormément de respect.
I can say that I have lots of respect. My parents paid taxes their entire lives and raised their children properly. You have before you somebody who has a great deal of respect for all Canadians and who feels